Super Bowl is the biggest sports spectacle in the U.S., so naturally the NFL and Jay-Z's Rock Nation decided Bad Bunny was the move.
Bad Bunny, a Puerto Rican artist who doesn't even perform in English, is headlining America's biggest show, the Super Bowl halftime. And people are losing their minds. Some are calling it un-American, others are calling it progress, but the truth is way simpler. It's business. The NFL doesn't care about language, it cares about numbers. And Bad Bunny brings in global eyes, from Mexico to Germany, Puerto Rico to Brazil. While fans argue online about culture and identity, the NFL is expanding its empire worldwide. This isn't about music or representation. It's about leverage, and right now, Bad Bunny has all of it. Between July 3rd and July 6th, New Orleans once again hosted the Essence Festival. But this year's event sparked quite a conversation. Unlike previous years, the 2025 festival placed a stronger focus on the Pan-African community rather than primarily centering on Black Americans, which drew some backlash. Essence's decision seemed rooted in a business strategy. The brand already commands a loyal Black American audience, so expanding its reach to include a broader African diaspora makes financial sense. It's a move reminiscent of BET's recent shift, when on September 12th, the network launched the BET Caribbean Awards, effectively replacing the long-loved Soul Train and Hip Hop Awards. That decision frustrated many in the community who felt that core cultural platforms were drifting from their original purpose. In both cases, two major institutions in Black entertainment are visibly broadening their audiences, though not without controversy. Then came another headline-making announcement. On September 28, 2025, Bad Bunny, the Puerto Rican megastar, was revealed as the Super Bowl halftime headliner. While his global fame is unquestionable, some Americans voiced frustration, largely because none of his hit songs are in English. The reaction reignited ongoing debates about representation, language, and cultural identity in mainstream entertainment.
Bad Bunny is massively successful, there is no denying that, but here's the question: why would an American audience want to watch a halftime show performed mostly in a language we don't
Even many Black audiences across Latin America and abroad have been weighing in on the conversation. Bad Bunny, after all, is a global superstar, just not someone who gets a lot of radio play in mainstream American spaces. Personally, if you asked me to name one of his songs, I probably couldn't. And that's not coming from hate, it's just reality. Where exactly do you even hear Bad Bunny's music if you're not tuned into Latin or international charts? For a lot of Black Americans, it's a similar story. Most folks don't know a single Bad Bunny track, unless, maybe, you're dating someone who's Puerto Rican or Mexican. Still, he's been chosen to headline the Super Bowl halftime show, which has stirred mixed reactions. Interestingly, much of the criticism seems to be coming from white audiences, not necessarily from Black listeners. Some in the dominant white community appear upset, partly because Bad Bunny has publicly criticized Donald Trump and spoken out about immigration policies and ICE. That political edge has made him a bit of a polarizing figure. So, across the board, the complaints tend to sound the same. We don't know his songs. He doesn't sing in English. Commentator Tariq offered a more neutral take, acknowledging that while he personally doesn't know Bad Bunny's music, he recognizes the artist's influence and isn't particularly bothered by his selection. As Tariq pointed out, though, it's the white audience that seems most upset, and honestly, he's not wrong. As an adult and a free American, I have the simple choice to not watch the Super Bowl halftime show if I'm not interested. It really is that easy. We live in a time when everything, music, entertainment, and even personal preference, has become so politicized that people forget the basic power of free will. If Bad Bunny is performing and I don't particularly care to see it, I can just change the channel for 20 minutes, grab a snack, check my phone, or have a conversation with friends until the game comes back on. It's not that deep. What I'm not going to do is make a spectacle out of it. I'm not going to paint protest signs, march outside the stadium, or write angry posts across social media about how the halftime show doesn't represent me or my culture. I'm not going to throw a fit because the performer chosen this year doesn't align with my personal taste. That kind of outrage culture has become exhausting. And frankly, it's unnecessary. Sometimes, all it takes is a little common sense. If you don't like what's on TV, turn it off. It sounds simple, but we've somehow lost touch with that logic. We've entered an era where people feel personally offended by things that were never intended to be personal. Entertainment decisions, like who performs at the Super Bowl halftime show, are driven by business, marketing, and demographics. They are not moral statements or attacks on identity. Yet, year after year, people take it that way. Instead of recognizing the halftime show for what it is, a spectacle designed to attract viewers and advertisers. Many treat it as a reflection of their self-worth or societal standing. Here's the truth. The NFL isn't picking artists to make anyone feel validated. They are picking artists to make money and to reach as many eyes and ears as possible. That's their job. It's a corporation, not a cultural movement. So when people rage online about why a certain artist was chosen, they are misunderstanding how this all works. The NFL doesn't need your approval. It needs your viewership. And even when people claim they are boycotting, most still tune in anyway, because controversy only feeds curiosity. In a world where outrage drives clicks, it's easy to confuse attention with influence. We've been conditioned to think that complaining publicly makes us powerful, when in reality, self-control is power. The ability to decide, I'm not interested, and that's okay, without needing to make a scene about it, that's maturity. Choosing peace over noise is an underrated form of freedom. There's also something to be said about perspective. The halftime show is 15, maybe 20 minutes long. The game itself lasts for hours. The experience of gathering with friends and family, cheering for your team, and enjoying the moment. That's what the Super Bowl is really about for most people. Reducing it to a cultural battleground misses the entire point. And yet, every year, social media turns into a circus of opinions. This performer doesn't represent America. That artist doesn't speak for me. Why didn't they pick so-and-so? But here's the uncomfortable truth. Nobody is entitled to have their preferences reflected in a national broadcast. There are hundreds of millions of viewers, all with different tastes, backgrounds, and expectations. It's impossible to please everyone. The sooner we accept that, the happier we'll be. When I say I'll simply change the channel if I'm not interested, I'm not being dismissive, I'm exercising a right that everyone has but few use wisely, the right to disengage. You don't have to consume every piece of media that exists. You don't have to comment on everything that happens. And you certainly don't have to let entertainment decisions dictate your mood or your worldview. Somewhere along the line, we equated silence with weakness, as though choosing not to react means you don't care. But that's not true. Sometimes silence means strength. It means you've evaluated something, realized it's not worth your energy, and moved on. The ability to ignore what doesn't serve you is one of the most powerful skills you can develop as an adult in a noisy, opinion-driven world. Now, of course, you can have an opinion about who performs. You can prefer one genre over another. That's part of what makes art subjective. But turning a personal preference into a public crusade only wastes energy that could be spent on something productive. Why not use that passion to support artists you love, rather than tearing down the ones you don't? Why not create spaces for your culture and voice, instead of demanding that corporations do it for you? That's the irony. People often claim to want representation, but instead of building their own platforms, they wait for existing institutions to validate them. Meanwhile, the real power lies in creating your own stage, not in begging for a spot on someone else's. So yes, if I don't like who's performing at the Super Bowl halftime show, I'll change the channel. Not because I'm bitter, but because I'm free. Free to choose what I engage with, free to protect my peace, and free to understand that my happiness doesn't depend on what happens on a TV screen. At the end of the day, adulthood is about discernment, the wisdom to know when to speak up and when to move on. And sometimes, the smartest, calmest, and most self-respecting thing you can do is just turn the channel. No protests, no hashtags, no tantrums, just the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you control your attention, your emotions, and your time. That's real freedom. Now, Tommy Lauren and others have argued that the halftime show should cater to the widest audience possible. And let's be honest, when they say that, what they really mean is white audiences. Their logic goes something like this: if you want mass appeal, book someone like Taylor Swift, because everyone knows her songs. But here's where the argument gets interesting. These same critics claim the NFL should have learned from what they call last year's flop with Kendrick Lamar. And while they might admit Kendrick is talented, they insist his music doesn't have enough universally recognized hits to connect with casual fans. The halftime show, they argue, should be about broad, cross-cultural entertainment, the kind that resonates with everyone. Even though Bad Bunny is Puerto Rican, and therefore a US citizen, some of his fan base includes people from Latin America who might not have legal status in the US. Reportedly, he's cautious about touring heavily in the States because he doesn't want his fans to risk ICE raids or deportation at his concerts. Instead, he's chosen to perform more often in Puerto Rico, Latin America, and Europe, where his supporters can attend freely. That decision, however, hasn't sat well with some critics. They argue that it's unfair for an artist who avoids touring in the US to be rewarded with the Super Bowl halftime show, one of the country's biggest stages. But here's where the broader picture comes in. It's all about leverage and money. As with the Essence Festival and Bet, which both expanded to attract wider audiences, the NFL operates on the same principle. Its goal is growth, not cultural loyalty. When Essence leaned toward Pan-African themes, some Black Americans felt alienated. Now, as the NFL highlights a Spanish-speaking superstar, many white audiences are voicing similar frustrations. Yet from a business standpoint, the NFL's move makes perfect sense. The league has been aggressively expanding its international reach, hosting games in Germany, the United Kingdom, at Wembley and Tottenham Stadium, Mexico, and now Brazil. And here's the kicker. Some of those international stadiums sell out faster than American ones. So while fans in the US debate over language and culture, the NFL sees a bigger picture, a global audience that represents the next frontier for profit and popularity. Take Mexico, for example. Back in 2005, the game between the Arizona Cardinals and San Francisco 49ers drew an astonishing 103,467 fans, still the largest attendance ever for an NFL regular season matchup. Since then, every NFL game held in Mexico has sold out, with demand consistently outpacing supply. The message is clear: Mexico, sitting right next to the United States, represents a massive untapped market. There's money to be made through ticket sales, merchandise, local sponsorships, and advertising, all from a fan base that's already deeply invested in the sport. Then there's Brazil, another growing frontier. In 2024, when the Packers faced off against the Eagles, the game drew 47,236 fans, not quite a full 50,000-seat sellout, but still an impressive turnout for a first-time market. The Chargers are set to play there this year, and the NFL expects even bigger crowds as the league's presence continues to expand. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom remains the NFL's most consistent international success story. In 2022, when the Buccaneers played the Seahawks in London, 70,000 tickets sold out in just 3 minutes. The momentum carried into Germany, where 2023 game in Frankfurt sold out instantly. Germany has quickly become the NFL's fastest-growing international market. The league has even established development programs and high schools across Europe to nurture young football talent, some of whom are now competing with, and occasionally defeating, American players. So what's the takeaway? Bad Bunny has leverage. His enormous popularity across Latin America and Europe aligns perfectly with the NFL's global expansion goals. By placing him center stage at the Super Bowl halftime show, the league isn't just making a cultural statement, it's making a strategic business move. Bad Bunny brings in new viewers, new markets, and new revenue, helping the NFL grow far beyond US borders. And this is where many in the Black community often miss the bigger picture: leverage. Understanding how influence and demand work is key to seeing why artists like Bad Bunny can secure opportunities others can't. The NFL, for example, is struggling to capture the attention of younger audiences. Traditional marketing and familiar performers aren't enough anymore. Enter Bad Bunny, a global megastar with a massive fan base across Latin America, Europe, and beyond. His popularity extends far outside the NFL's usual reach, which means the league needs him far more than he needs them. He's simply too big to ignore. So, when the NFL books him for the Super Bowl halftime show, it isn't about politics or preference, it's about business. To tap into new international markets, they have to align with someone whose influence transcends borders. That's why they'll let him perform his Spanish-language hits on the biggest American stage, even if a segment of the audience grumbles about it. And honestly, the backlash doesn't matter much. People might complain online, but when game day comes, they'll still watch. The NFL knows that. This is the same Bad Bunny, remember, who recently chose not to tour in the US because of concerns over ICE enforcement and the risk of his undocumented fans facing deportation. Meanwhile, the US government has ramped up border control policies, making his stance even more symbolic. Still, the bottom line remains unchanged. In today's media and entertainment landscape, power follows leverage, not outrage. The NFL, like any major corporation, is following the numbers, and right now, those numbers point straight to Bad Bunny's global audience. Take Zach Russian, for example. He says he'll still watch the game but will probably skip the halftime show. Fair enough. But here's the bigger truth: when you have your community solidly behind you, others will recognize that power and come to you to access your audience. That's what leverage looks like. This is something the Black community often overlooks. If we had the same unified support system that the Latino community has for its artists, we'd be in a position to command the same kind of respect and opportunities. Bad Bunny can turn down US tours and still thrive because his people will support him no matter where he goes. He knows his value. So when the NFL comes knocking, he's in control of the conversation. Want my audience? Great, book me. But I'm not changing who I am. I'll perform in Spanish. And they agree, because they need what he brings. At the same time, Bad Bunny understands what this moment means for him, too. Performing at the Super Bowl isn't just about exposure, it's about cementing his legacy. He'll be the artist who took the biggest American stage and delivered his art entirely in Spanish, unapologetically. For the NFL, it's a business decision. The league is signaling that it's no longer just America's sport, it's becoming an international brand. With games in Mexico, Germany, the UK, and Brazil, the message is clear. Growth lies beyond US borders. Americans can complain if they want, but this is the direction global entertainment is moving in: expansion and inclusion. And this same pattern can be seen elsewhere. Bet with its Caribbean Awards, Essence Festival embracing a broader Pan-African identity, all are playing the same game of market growth. The hard truth is, while others are building and owning their audiences, much of Black America is still struggling to control its own market share. And when you don't control your market, someone else profits from it. Think about it this way. If Ebony magazine were still fully Black-owned and had expanded internationally, into Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, and South Africa, it could easily have become one of the most influential media brands in the world. That's the kind of global power that comes from vision and scale. And that's the lesson here. The Black community has to start thinking beyond local markets and learn to play the global game. It's not enough to just create within our own circles. Once we establish ownership, the next step is expansion. That's how we build true leverage. Look at what the NFL is doing. They are growing internationally and don't care if some white fans feel left out. Bet is expanding into Caribbean and diaspora markets, even if that frustrates some Black audiences. Both are focusing on growth, not comfort. Meanwhile, we're the ones getting angry while everyone else is out there scaling their influence. If we want the same kind of power, we have to get in the game and start building leverage. Because once you have something people need, whether it's culture, talent, or audience, they have no choice but to deal with you. So, that's the real takeaway. Leverage brings freedom, opportunity, and respect. Without it, others make the rules and profit from our culture.